Hello, Husker fans, and welcome to episode 97 of Generation Red, the kettle corn of Husker fan podcast, where we try to be sweet, but at times we get salty. I am your host, Ken.
Hello, and I am your other host, Scott.
And we are a proud member of the Herd at Sports Network, something that I have not said on the show in quite a while. Apologize to the powers that be at Herd at, but they're great people down there, and I am working on a possible, I don't know, sponsorship of some sort from a particular kettle corn company here in town. So going to do some talking with them this next week, which may or may not net us. Heard at the agreement we have with them is that if we get any sponsorships that get us any revenue, we have to split it 50-50. I'm just looking for free popcorn. That's all I'm in this for. I don't need, it'd just be kind of cool to just say brought to you by such and such gourmet popcorn company. So anyway, that's just something I've got kind of going in the works. And among other things, like once we're done with the weekly shows here, which next week will be kind of our last weekly show because it's the end of the season, I am planning to really work hard on marketing the YouTube channel, figuring out how to maximize the visibility, all that kind of stuff. So if you folks who are watching would do us a big favor, anytime we're live or anytime we post video content, anytime you watch it, if you would do us a huge solid and just hit that like button. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and get subscribed and ring that bell. The more subscriptions we get, the more likes we get, the more our content gets pushed out to other viewers who may be looking for content just like this. So we'd really appreciate it. I think that's about it for the the beginning stuff.
Formalities. There we go.
Formalities.
I was trying to think of the word.
Yeah. We were supposed to have a guest tonight, folks, and I am not sure why we don't. I have not received any word. We had been in contact and communication all morning. So you will see reflection of this person who was supposed to be on the stream with us tonight. Brandon, if you happen to be watching, please, you've got the link in your email. Don't be afraid to hit that link and pop on in. We'd love to have you on the show. But we'll share your information that you shared with us, with everyone. So anyway, if y'all want to know what Aaron or Brandon thinks specifically about the Iowa game upcoming, stay tuned to the last half of the show. Of course, Nebraska went to Madison, and for the first quarter, it looked like Nebraska was going to play a pretty good game. I meant to grab the tweet, but I didn't because I didn't want to put one of my own up on the screen. But I did tweet something about midway through the second quarter when I said, oh my gosh, it kind of feels like Nebraska's done scoring. And other than a field goal at the very, very end of regulation, I was right. And I hate when I'm right, but it kind of had that 2022 Minnesota game feel to it, where we jump out to a 10-0 lead and then we don't put anything else on the board until I don't think we scored another point in the Minnesota game. So at least we added another 3. But anyway, yeah, it was just a weird night last night. I was frustrated while at the same time extremely proud of the way Chuba played. The dude has some moxie. If he's got a groin injury that he's hobbling around on and he's that quick and he's that shifty, I'll say this, as a runner, Chuba is a lot more shifty than the bigger guys are, than Sims and Heinrich are. That little hole on the inside of the option for him to run, he picked 2 of those real quick and immediately cut off that 1 foot, and boom, he was 5-6 yards upfield. So I think he's got a little bit more explosiveness and the ability to move a little bit on the run. So that made me feel pretty good. But other than that, damn it, the defense just couldn't hold up. I don't know if that's just maybe wear and tear after an entire season of basically being on the field for half the game or more or what, but it was just disheartening at the end.
Yep. I'll expand on my thoughts when we get more through the slides, but yeah.
So, well, since we've talked about the slides, let's just go ahead and throw them up there right before we get into the game itself. Here's a little tidbit that I heard from the guys that were covering the game on NBC that going into the game Saturday night, Nebraska had given away a total of 27 turnovers in 2023, which we all knew. But what I didn't know was that 13 of those 27 turnovers were in the fourth quarter of all of our games. And I believe until overtime last night, this would have been Nebraska's first turnover-free game of the season. So there's some positivity, I suppose, you could take in the fact that the turnover only came on a desperate 4th and 16 pass. That had it not been quite as overthrown as it was, maybe Jalen Lloyd had a shot at it, and we could have got a first down and lived to fight another down or two. But anyway, that's just an interesting tidbit that I happened to hear right at the beginning of the game.
Fun little fact, when we were going through our game preview, my bold prediction was that we would somehow only manage 2 turnovers in the game. And so I wasn't even bold enough. If I would have went with we would give no turnovers at all, that would have been incredibly bold. And I would have been right because, I mean, technically I'm talking about 4 quarters and overtime doesn't count. So that's just something interesting. And I mean, I wouldn't have known that we didn't give any turnovers because other than the first half, I mean, it was pretty sloppy. And I mean, I'll give a disclaimer. I only watched about 60% of the game. I tweeted about it saying that I wasn't going to be able to watch the game because I was in the middle of nowhere next to the Missouri River.
Yeah.
And it turns out being next to the Missouri River means you do have reception, which is kind of cool. So I was able to actually watch the game, but I had it on mute and was sitting around the campfire having a good time with my in-laws and my wife and my dog, and just kind of passively watched the game. But yeah, I mean, from what I could tell, it looked like it should have been a high turnover game. But I guess I didn't even know the stats until later that night, and was shocked to see only 1 turnover. Because, like I said, I would just kind of like watch the game. I'd be like, "Oh, we're on offense," and then I would look back at my phone like 2 minutes later, and it's like, "Oh, Wisconsin's out there." And I'm like,
yeah.
And I'm like, they're at the same position we were at in the field. So does that mean that we turned the ball over? I guess so, probably. But I guess not. So
no, it wasn't a lot of turnovers, but they didn't turn the ball over once. So there was a couple times the ball was on the ground. I think Quentin Ives fumbled like a punt or something, or a kickoff or something along the way. But ball was on the ground once, but there were really no turnovers in regulation for either team. So it was a very clean game. There were some other stats that were a little interesting that we haven't seen out of Nebraska in a few weeks. We'll get to those in a minute, but here's the key moments in the first half. Number one, of course, being the very first drive, Purdy gets that 55-yard TD run on, I think it was 3rd and 3 or something like that. And I think Wisconsin didn't realize how fast he was. And they may have expected him to go out of bounds. And then he puts his foot in the ground and boom, cuts it back to the middle of the field and just outruns everybody. So that was exciting. And then the second drive, he throws a 58-yard TD pass to Jalen Lloyd, where Jalen catches the ball. And as he catches it, he gets hit dead in the side, right in the hip by a would-be Wisconsin tackler, but he kind of bounced off of him. So, maybe if that defender had been in a little bit better position, he would have been able to get Jalen Lloyd to the ground, but then there was nobody near him, and he just tried,
that was beautiful.
Boogies on into the end zone. It was a pretty cool play, and I thought, wow, here we go, maybe. And then I was like, yeah, but it's 2023. We can't have good things. And sure enough, our third drive, we moved the ball well. And on a 4th and 1 at the 33, Wisconsin's 33, think about it. It's probably a 50-yard field goal try if you don't go for it. And I don't know. Seems like they haven't been trusting Alvano much lately for some reason or another. And so we turned it over on downs. So we didn't quite pick it up. And Wisconsin they had 2 punts. Their first 2 drives resulted in a punt. And then their third drive is when they actually scored in the second quarter. And they only had 1 third down on that drive. It just seemed like they didn't have a lot of third downs to convert. It seemed like there'd be 2nd and long, and Mordecai would scramble out of there when we'd get some pressure on him. There was at least 3 or 4 tackles in the backfield on Mordecai that our guys missed. So it was uncharacteristic of them to have a quarterback as slow as him to get out of their grasp. And he's playing with a broken hand to boot. But Anyway, they scored on that third drive. They scored on another drive, a field goal, the very next drive, I believe it was 14-10 Nebraska. Then, of course, we drive right down at the end of the second quarter. We play for a field goal. We get to within range, and Avana pushes a 42-yarder to the right. So it was a good hold, it was a good snap. Everything was good. He just pushed it to the right. And, he's 18 years old. So on the road, crazy drunk crowd. God only knows how many alcohol fumes were in his face coming out of that crowd.
Yep.
But so I don't know. Any thoughts on? I know you said you just kind of casually watched it, so you probably don't remember or noticed any of these plays. But
yeah, because I'd finished making dinner. We sat down and started eating at about like 6:15. 6:15, and then wanted to build up a better fire because it was starting to get cold. So I was on fire duty, and then I checked my ESPN app or whatever and saw it was like 11 minutes and we had already scored. And I was like, whoa, okay. And then I looked at the play-by-play and was like, whoa, we just like drove down the field, and then Purdy took off for 55 yards, which of course I couldn't necessarily find like a highlight of it. It wasn't until the second half, and I was catching kind of a second half highlight reel and whatnot, and was like, oh, okay, so that's how he did that. That was pretty neat. Yeah, I mean, you kind of summarized it perfectly, that there was just this feeling after the first quarter as I was kind of watching the second half play, and it was, or second quarter. And I kind of mentioned it to you before we started streaming, but it was like, it looks like Satterfield's script ended. The first 15 plays of the game that they had scripted out, it's like they were done. So now you have to rely on actual competent play calling, which there is none. And we started, I don't know if tell me if I'm wrong, but like, it just seemed like they were trying to play a lot of fancy stuff. Like, instead of just, I mean, yeah, we ran the ball a lot, but it seemed like a lot of those run plays were these really goofy design, like trickery, double pitch, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, why are we pulling this out of our ass right now? Like, what are we doing here? This, like, if you just give it and just run it up the middle and play it safe, like, yeah, we're probably not gonna score on every drive, but we're gonna flip field position. And we just kind of, it just seemed like in the second quarter that we could have gotten better field position had we just played more conservatively. That's just kind of how I looked at it.
Yeah, as the game unfolded, something was incredibly clear. The defense was a little off. And I don't know what it is. I mean, yeah, we ran the ball 62.5% of the time last night. I actually figured out the math, which is about what we've been doing the last few weeks. But you're still not letting guys like Johnson or Grant get into a lather. The leading rusher every single time is still our quarterback. And I'm sorry, you're not going to win a lot of football games if you're depending on your quarterback to be your leading rusher. Then we called that throwback pass play again that we scored against Minnesota on, and it was sniffed out and was like a 12-yard loss. When Purdy caught the ball, it got lit up. Now, if that guy didn't pick up on the play, there was nobody within 30 yards of the kid. It would have been an easy touchdown, but they figured it out. So, I'm like, why are we calling this? Why aren't we? I tweeted it out. I said, it seems like Satterfield is absolutely unwilling to require his team to be physical up front. Just unwilling. He won't depend on the run game. He won't depend on a back to go out and get him 100 yards. I'm sorry. This is the Big freaking 10. You need to have a 100-yard rusher every single game if you're going to win a lot of games in the Big Ten. You just need to. And it can't be your damn quarterback. It just can't.
Luke Fickell is learning that the hard way. He's got an all country talent in Braylon Allen, and he's not even going to sniff 100 or 1,000 yards this season. He had 2 back-to-back 1,200-yard seasons, and I was sitting there thinking, okay, maybe it's just he's not developed. Like I saw that tweet, like, what's the most disappointing developed player that had like a good freshman year and just never kind of popped off after that. And I was thinking, well, in current times, I would say Braylon Allen, but then I realized actually, I mean, yes, he had the same amount of production his second year, but it came at the hand of like an extra 50 rush attempts. But still, a 4.5, 5 yard average rush per game, you've got a bell cow there. And it's a perfect example of like if you try and do something different in the Big Ten. Now the West is going to be it's going to disintegrate after this year, but Wisconsin would have right now, I mean, talent-wise on their team, they should be an 8-win team. They just are doing something different. They've got a new staff. They've got a new model that they're trying to work with, which it may develop as you get the USCs and UCLAs and whatnot all joining. You're going to have more of an opportunity to kind of change the dynamic of the Big Ten. But I mean, if you want to win these games, you've got to just find something that works and you got to stick with it on a game-to-game basis. Like, I mean, I was looking at Anthony Grant a few times that I saw him. It looked like he was kind of locked in. It looked like he was ready to have a game of the
running dudes
game of the
over
year.
too. Absolutely running dudes over. It was
and
leaning
then
into
went away
contact.
with it.
It was beautiful. And then what do you have? 7 carries, 8 carries. It's just freaking frustrating. Moving on to the second half. Hartzog had a penalty in the end zone on Wisconsin's second drive that gave them the first down on the 2-yard line. Of course, Braylon Allen scores. So you've got 17-14 Wisconsin. Nebraska punted 4 straight times in the second half to begin the second half. And then on their 5th drive, Alvano nails a 30-yard field goal to tie it up at 17-17. Now, there's a lot that happened in between there. There's a lot of scuttle on Twitter where people are pissing and whining because Rule played for the tie and didn't play for the win at the end of regulation.
That pisses me
they
off.
moved the ball down. Now, he said it in his press conference. Good grief, people. You guys crabbed at me because I wouldn't play for the field goal at the end of the Maryland game. Well, I played for that this time. We played it safe. What do you guys expect from me? So he's damned if he does. He's damned if he doesn't. Meanwhile, I think Carolina lost again today. Dang it.
Damn it, Matt Rule.
2-9 or some crap on the season. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But doesn't matter. Nebraska drove the ball down. Believe it or not, there was actually some decent play calls. Again, Chubba's legs bailed the team out in a very key third down. And so we get to overtime. They win the toss, or we win the toss. We defer, give them the ball first, and they converted 2 huge third downs, including one where Braylon Allen goes down, gets knocked on his ass by Isaac Gifford, and then throws his legs up in the air and trips Gifford on the way to the quarterback. Otherwise, it would have been a sack. Would have been a sack. No call. It was one of the few no calls during the night that kind of bugged me. There was a couple of holds that looked fairly obvious, but they didn't call them. But, there was also a bunch of penalties by Nebraska. It was a pretty sloppy game that way, especially on the offensive line. Nebraska's they convert 2/3 and they convert their first 4th down of the game. Nebraska had held them 0 for 2 on 4th down throughout the game, and then on the last one they got it in overtime, and then it wasn't long after that, and Allen's in the end zone again for a touchdown. So Purdy throws an INT on 4th and 16, which is basically a desperation play at the end. You've got to convert. He just throws it up there off his back foot. Heavy rush because they knew he was going to have to throw, and we know how good this offensive line is at dealing with decent defenses. They're not very good. So there you go. That's how the game ended. Wisconsin walks off with a 24-17 win after being down 14-0. It's just disheartening. But at the same time, there's a lot of positive in my mind. There's a lot of positives. We've got a quarterback, it looks like, for at least the rest of the season. I wish he'd have been healthier sooner, because I think Purdy would have won us a couple of those games we lost, and we'd probably be bowl eligible right now if he didn't get hurt in fall camp. So Here's hoping his groin surgery in the offseason is successful and he comes back and competes with whoever they may bring in or may not bring in out of the transfer portal in the offseason. So,
yeah, I think
there you go.
I was gonna say that I think we would have scored a touchdown on that final drive had we called a timeout and not let 20 seconds run off the clock.
It's possible.
I
Yeah.
think I don't care that we kicked a game-winning or a game-tying field goal. Like, that's what I wanted last week. We got it this week. I was like, thank you, but where are those 20 seconds? Why did we sit there and play a dumb game of, all right, let's line up. There's only 38 seconds left. Let's line up slowly.
Yeah.
Oh, and then we'll just call timeout.
I know there was clock management that people are questioning today. I didn't mind it. I prefer not to throw the opportunity of more interceptions at the very end of regulation at this offense that can't stop turning the ball over in the fourth quarter. To me, it was the smart play. Kick the game, tying field goal, trust your defense in overtime. Unfortunately, that gamble just didn't pay off. So last week, he should have kicked the field goal to put points on the board so that you're leading and you put pressure on the other team to go down and score as well. And we didn't do that. We could have bled another minute and a half off the clock if we had done that and left Maryland with almost no time to get down there, but we didn't do that. So it is what it is. And I think this staff is learning too how to win in the Big Ten, not just the players. So
yeah, I don't think they knew what they wanted to do there. They were like,
Yep.
"Oh, what do we do? Are we going like, okay, yeah, we're playing it safe." It took them 20 seconds to figure that out, and it's just like you got to have a plan. And if your plan is to go down and drive and score a touchdown, you have to have a plan for that. And the plan is don't pass the freaking ball. I mean, it's like those 20 seconds are 2 rush plays with timeouts apiece with, just like from a logistical standpoint, we had timeouts available. There was no reason to rush yourself. You have timeouts available, so why are you passing it in the red zone anyway?
Right.
And so, like, yeah, we're turnover prone, but like up to that point, we hadn't.
No.
And it's like you just kind of know, like you should just know, like just run the ball because I mean, it's a 0-sum game. I mean, we're kicking a 30-yard field goal to tie the game, or we're kicking a 27-yard field goal or 33, whatever it is. You still got to give the guys the opportunity to run because I'm not saying pass. Don't pass in this situation. Clearly, we suck at it. And even though Purdy was showing better, he was looking better than what we'd seen in our 2 previous quarterbacks. I mean, just run the freaking ball. Like, I mean, that was my key to victory was don't get cute. Don't be passing the ball. Yep. Just run the ball. I truly believe we would have made it in that end zone if our guys were just given the go ahead to just run the ball, do some option stuff, do some play action or not play action, some draws, whatever. Because I mean, we were just going down the field.
I honestly don't know if that's in the playbook anymore. I don't think that's in Satterfield's DNA. Just isn't.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like it's kind of a roundabout criticism of just like, yeah, we still got to fire Satterfield. I'm so pissed that like
I'm tired of it.
This is the thing that drives me nuts about my fellow fan base. Okay. This is what happened with Scott Frost. And I don't think anybody learned their lesson with it, is that we'd come out of a game and everybody would be like, this is what's wrong with us. This is what's wrong with us. And then the coach would come out and he would say, blah, blah, blah. And then everyone would be like, okay, I'm fine. That's sufficient. Sure. That's cool. And that's exactly what happened when Rule came out and said, like, what do you guys want me to do with my offensive coordinator? You guys have failed in the past firing people, which is a bold-faced lie. We held on to coaches for way too long. They should have been fired sooner. So that was kind of out of touch from our head coach. And then,
well, not really, because Scott Frost fired 3 offensive coordinators in the span of his 5 years. So he did make changes. They just weren't the right ones.
Yes.
So that's not fair to say, I don't think.
Well,
yeah, he's 11 games in. You're not going to fire OC after 11 games. Or 12.
Yeah, and you gotta kind of count the fact that, like, okay, well, only 2 of them were technically gonna stay around with him because Mark Whipple. But anyway, that's it doesn't negate the fact that when I'm pointing out that Matt Rule is out of touch with that statement, it's still true. It's like you don't you aren't paying attention there, buddy. And I don't blame you. You're a new guy. You're coming in and you've only had one whole year to figure out what the hell's been going on with Nebraska, because Nebraska was not on his radar a year and a half ago at all.
Right.
And so he makes those comments, and then all of the Husker fan base suddenly, there's like this rallying cry. I saw a bunch of names all saying, Satterfield, blah, we got to do something about this. And then Matt Rule comes out and just basically pulls on the heartstrings of Nebraska fans about like, well, this is my plan. And then everyone goes, oh, yeah, that's right. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then they play this dumb authoritative game where it's like, well, who's smarter, you or Coach Rule? I don't see you as a head coach. And it's like, shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear that. Like, we can call this out however you want, but we're now 11 games deep, and there's nothing on our offense that shows that Marcus Satterfield is a competent coach. Because what did we have? We had a quarterback that didn't make any mistakes all the way up until overtime. And you just call the bullshittiest calls the whole freaking game. And it's like, dude, a spade is a spade. This isn't going to work. This isn't a sustainable model here. This is a guy that's like, okay, you want the right, like a good coach isn't a coach that says, well, I just need the right guys. A la Dion, a la Scott Frost, a la whoever's coach has failed before. They all just, I just need my guys here. I need to have the right players. I need to not have an injured roster. No, a good coach works with what they have. They're able to see what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses. Clearly, our coaching staff cannot figure out what our offensive strengths are. They can't figure it out. They haven't been able to figure it out. As casual Husker fans, I mean, we can all agree that you've got a guy in Emmett Johnson. You've got a guy in Anthony Grant. You've got an offensive line that is, nobody's talking about how well our offensive line has made a jump this year. Like, the amount of times,
2 guys on the left side that went down, it seems like the line's improved. Other than Prohaska having 2 penalties on him last night, so he had a rough night.
Yes, and so I'm just looking at it from I'm just frustrated just all across the board here. It's like, I get it. Matt Rule's in a very precarious, situation. He's got his best friend as his offensive coordinator. I don't want to say best friend. That's a little bit up. He's got a friend. He's got a homie. He's got a homie as his offensive coordinator. And of course, he's going to, from a politics standpoint, it's not like he's going to go up on the podium and be like, yeah, we're going to start looking at other jobs, other candidates. He can't say that. But like, it's just so frustrating that it's like, guys, as a Husker base, we just like a Husker fan base, we need to identify something and then just stick with it. Stick with it.
The problem is the fan base is split. The fan base is split, and the fan base goes back and forth. Hell, I waffle back and forth on things, but you've got the Rule can do no wrong crowd, which in many cases I'm kind of in that camp because it is year one. And he has won more games in his first year here than he's ever won at a first year elsewhere. Granted, he has more resources. He has better players. You should expect him to win more here, and he has. He's flipped a culture that I didn't realize was as bad as it was. At least it appears to be. At the end of games, I think these guys are getting worn out because they're tired of being on the field all the time. They're only human. I think sometimes they quit on plays when they don't need to. Is that coaching? I don't know. But, he got the white hire right, to play as well as they've played first year in this scheme, first year running his defense with coaches he's never coached with before. He got the white hire right. He's obviously good at identifying coaching talent. His weak spot, in my humble opinion, is hiring a buddy to run the offense at 1.4 mil. White deserves 1.4 mil. Sat deserves to go coach tight ends at a high school, but that's just me and you, I'm sure too. But fan base is split. I'm pretty sure Rule's hurting, trying to figure out what can I do to help my buddy get better at this. I don't know. Seemed like he was looking at a play sheet a lot last night and helping Marcus out. But just I completely understand your frustration. fact is the fan base is not united. It's not going to be united. You've got the "See, I told you so's" who are Husker and Carolina Panther fans out there. You've got the "Come on, let him get his guys in here," the people that said the same thing about Riley, even when we saw that it was a system that wasn't going to work because it was designed for the Pac-12 and not for the Big Ten. I think Rule understands the physicality of the Big Ten. I think he's developing at least a defensive side of the football that's getting there. And we've seen an offensive line improve. So Raiola's job hopefully is safe. I would think Satterfield's seat needs to be a little warm next year.
Yeah, I think he
That would be
gets.
my
I think he
opinion.
gets I think he
And
gets the treatment that we should have been giving every coach up to this point, which is we have a standard at Nebraska. It doesn't matter if you're Matt Rule or God himself. Like
sure.
you are going to be held accountable, from me at least. Like I'm not going to allow the Scott Frost effect happen ever again.
Right. Well, what
I
can we do
like
to
Matt
affect it,
Rule.
though?
I think he's a good dude. I think he's a competent dude. I think he can make the right decisions. It's just a matter of when. When does he make the right decision?
Sure.
And I think the right decision, and I will bookmark this. I think the right decision is you fire Marcus Satterfield after this year. I don't care. I don't care if it's year one. You've got
I
year
think it's
one.
the right decision too. I just don't think it happens.
Yeah,
But I
that's
agree
fine.
with
That's
you. I
fine.
think it's the right decision. I just don't think it happens.
And that's fine. And I think you fire him, and you point to your defense and go, this is what you're supposed to do year one at Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
This is what okay, injuries, so what? I don't care. You make it work. If you're offensive coordinator worth your salt, you make it work. I mean, seriously, there's tons of dudes on our defense that were supposed to be unproven. We had many questions with the Cuzcast about our defense. What is it going to
Yep.
look like? There's a lot of young guys, unproven talent, dudes who didn't look good last year. Are they gonna make a step forward? Well, they did. We've got a decent defense. I don't want to say it's great. I think we got a good defense. I don't think it's great, but I think we got a good one.
It's
And
top
it's better.
25 in total defense at this point.
Yeah, but I think it's still a mirage.
So is
And
Iowa's because they play the same shitty teams we're playing. So they're just as much of a mirage on defense.
well, yeah, because they're going
Anybody
to go
else
to the
that
Big
has a
Ten
good defense in the
championship and
Big
they're going to
Ten
get
West.
blown out.
Yeah,
They're going to go to the
anybody
Big
else in
Ten
the Big Ten
championship and
West
they're
that
going to
has
get
a
blown
great
out.
defense is a mirage too. So you play who you play. You can't help that. I don't think it's a mirage. I just think it's a defense that hasn't really been tested like it could be, other than Colorado, but that was game 2. And Colorado's now turned into a giant gas bag of crap. So what have they lost 7 in a row?
Yeah, and
So,
Michigan's offense is, I mean, they just
yeah.
had a
Hey,
real hard test with the Maryland team that only put 13 points up on us. And so it's like, there is a lot of parity. There is a lot of parity to be
well, Michigan
observed.
can't scout signals anymore. And the 3 games since they can't scout signals anymore, they have given up the most points they've given up all season.
Yep.
So imagine how that works. Cheating doesn't. When you stop cheating, you don't end up playing as well. But Moonbot makes an interesting statement, and I'm kind of in his camp, but I'm not. I'm okay with keeping Satterfield, but Rule better understand in year 3 he could be replacing Satterfield because of being terrible and White leaving because of being good. I think the I think the seat's going to be a lot warmer a lot sooner than that, but I think it gets warm right from the get-go next year, in my opinion. And I think it needs to be. And I think if there's anybody that's going to say that seat needs to be warm, I wouldn't be surprised if Trev comes alongside and says, hey, this particular schema, it's not working. Unless this dude's willing to change how he runs his show, this ain't going to work. So, because I'm pretty sure Satterfield does not want a quarterback here that can run the option. I'm pretty damn sure about that. So
yeah, he wants a pro-style quarterback.
He wants pro style. He wants that Mike Riley style offense. Stand in the shotgun all damn day and just chuck the ball around and hand it off to a back here and there. Rule says he likes the I formation, so we'll see who wins out on that tug of war. But we've really hijacked where we were going to go with this, but it's okay because I thought that was it is an important conversation to have because I think you're right. I think the ineptitude on offense, I will give grace in the sense that I think trying to run a bunch of true freshmen out there to run a complicated passing scheme, that's difficult. And I think Rule kind of has that Callahan mentality. Let's jam these square pegs into these round holes of our offense, but we'll throw some other stuff in there that these guys can maybe run too. And it's kind of worked for 5 wins, but don't know, man. Don't know where it's going to go next year.
Yep.
But there's your players of the game. I kind of skipped the other slides. Tanner Mordecai for Wisconsin was a difference maker all night. Got out of a lot of tackles, threw for 160 yards and a touchdown on 18 for 28. He also had 9 carries for 51 yards. His counterpart on the other side, making his first start, was quarterback Chuba Purdy, 15 of 24 for 169 yards. That's a damn good percentage. 1 touchdown, unfortunately 1 INT at the end of overtime, and 14 carries for 105 yards and a TD, which led the team. Their inside linebacker, Jordan Turner, was outstanding. 9 tackles, 4 solo, 1.5 tackles for loss, which included 1 sack. And safety Marquise Buford Jr., kind of in his second full game back, was the second Husker black shirt to record double-digit tackles in a game with 10 total tackles, 9 of them solo, and 1.5 tackles for loss. So those are your players of the game. This is Dr. Rob's report card, which is a little more positive than I expected, except for the overall grade he gives at the bottom, which is basically a big face palm. The grades are all good up and down the line, but overall the game just, we didn't win. So it's a face plant grade. So I appreciate his insight, which I've got a couple other stuff from Twitter from him later on here, but that pretty much wraps up the Wisconsin game. Hey, looky there, we've got a few viewers now. So wow, that's as many as I've seen us have on a stream in a while. So thank you for watching. If you just happen to pop in, give us a quick like. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not, and ring the bell so you get all the notifications next time we go live. As soon as I mentioned that, one of them left. Go figure. But there you go. Then you're starting over completely, basically. Yeah, you're right, Bot. Starting over with it. And I think that's the point Rule was making, was that starting over with a new offense and changing the language and the vernacular all over again for the second time in 3 years, actually for the 5th time in 4 years, would be a little difficult on these players. But hey, half of the guys that were around for most of those OCs would be gone anyway next year. So making a change is not really bad timing for next year, in my opinion, because you're going to have a lot of young pups ready to learn, ready to go, ready to get going. So,
and you want a good foundation. You want a good field, to use a farmer term. If your soil is rotten, it doesn't matter if you wait another season. You got to till that shit up.
That's dead right there. I want the Ohio State type of offense. Badass offensive line, 1 kick-ass receiver, and an all-world running back. That's what our offense used to be.
I mean, you watch Ohio State week in, week out. You're not going to get the same game plan every single week.
Right.
They've got, if they recognize a game where they just need to run it up the gut, that's what they're going to do, and then that'll set up a few dink and dunks as they need. Anyway, that's just another rabbit hole to go down. But I agree.
I'm going to go back to a slide that I kind of went past a minute ago. We didn't really talk about it. It's just the other tidbit that I came up with just looking back at the stats. Running backs, Emmett Johnson and Anthony Grant averaged 3.8 yards per carry on 25 total carries for 95 yards and no touchdowns. Kind of surprised me that it was that low of a total as far as yards per carry, but it's one of their lowest totals for the year. I think Wisconsin was really scheming to say, no, these guys aren't going to beat us, because they didn't think Chuba was going to churn out 105 yards on his own. But he did. He averaged 7.5 yards per carry on 14 carries with a touchdown. And like we talked about before, 62.5% of the plays called last night were running plays. I'd like to see more like 70 to 75, especially if it's working. And at times it was working, especially with Grant. Grant was running mean and angry. But Bot did mention a little bit ago that he thought Grant left fairly hurt in that game. I didn't see that.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but I wasn't
did not see that. So
I was camping.
Maybe it was his knee or his ankle or something again. But anyway. So we might as well preview the the slobber knocker, the what we'd call the beautiful ugliness that we're probably going to witness next Saturday or next Friday. 5 days from now, Nebraska welcomes Iowa back into town. Nebraska, as of this point, they own the Heroes Trophy. They went to Iowa City and ruined Iowa's chances at going to the Big Ten title game by beating them 24-17 on their turf, largely on the back of Trey Palmer's huge reception yardage and 2 touchdowns. Because Cooper DeJean was out, that's what Iowa fans will say. If it weren't for Cooper DeJean getting hurt, there's no way Trey Palmer goes off for that much. Well, I beg to differ. I think he still has a big game. Maybe he doesn't have 2 TDs. Maybe they still win. I don't know. Fact is, we won. We have the Heroes Trophy. They've got to come in here and take it. They are qualified for the Big Ten championship game. They come in at 9-2 overall. Nebraska is, as we all know oh so well, 5-6 overall, still looking for that opportunity to go to a bowl. Iowa is 6-2 in the Big Ten. Nebraska's 3-5. You look at the numbers there; they're not pretty for either team. Nebraska's offense is just a little bit better than Iowa's, so a win is there. Even though, how the hell can you be number 14 in offense and number 4 in defense and scratch out a 9-2 record? It's got to be defense. It's got to be special teams stuff. I mean, they should be 10-1 because I still think that BS punt return for a touchdown that got called back was absolutely the wrong call. I don't care how many of my Husker friends scream and cry and say that Iowa did not deserve to get that touchdown because they're a rival. Screw you. Iowa got screwed. End of story. They should be 10-1. With the worst offense on the planet. I mean, they're dead last in the NCAA in total offense. You want to know why Brian Frantz will not have a job after Friday? That's why. They're down. They're 14th in the conference, 125th in the country at 30.8% conversion rate. Oh, and their total offense is 245 yards per game. They average 119 yards per game on the ground, whereas Nebraska's defense is giving up 86.5 yards per game on the ground. That's a key matchup. And then the other key matchup is their rush defense against our rush offense, because we are number 1 in the Big Ten, number 27 in the country at 187 yards a game. And they are number 4 in the Big Ten at 108.36 yards per game given up on defense via the rush. So they're pretty good on third down, stopping people at 31.2%, whereas Nebraska's pretty good at stopping folks at 37%. It was weird. The stat was identical for offense and defense for third down percentage, Scott. I looked at it 3 times. It was 37.04%. I wonder if they'd put the wrong stat in one of those 2 categories. I don't know. I couldn't figure out the math on my own to figure out which was right, which was wrong. Maybe they're both absolutely identical. Never know. But turnover margin is a big one. They're not a whole lot better than we are, in that they're -3 for the year, whereas we're -15.
Which is really sad. Which is really sad to look at. They're -3 and they're almost in the top 100. Or they're in the top 100, just almost outside of it. Mm-hmm. And we have 12 more turnovers than they do.
Right. Well, if you look at that list, it's
so
like
nuts.
It's like you get to about 120, and those people are at like -8.
Dude, what I would kill for a -3 turnover margin, dude. What the hell?
Who wouldn't want a -3?
I would love to be 94th in the country right now. Give me that.
That would be beautiful, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So there you go.
Perspective is a bitch.
It hurts. It just hurts. So I asked you for the players to watch, and these are the guys that you researched. And when I looked at their stat lines, I'm like, it makes absolute perfect sense. Obviously, we're in love with Isaac Gifford, because this is like the 4th or 5th time this year we put him down as a player to watch, but he's everywhere. He's all over the field. So he affects the game for sure.
He's got to be like a second team, first team All Big Ten, I would hope.
I would think he should at least be
second team,
honorable mention or second team. I mean, come on. He's adapted, and we still get him for another year, I think. And I think if Ty wants to come back, he's itching for an all Big Ten spot and possibly even Hutmacher. So
Luke
both
Gifford
those
has
guys
just
have
got to
been
be the
solid.
proudest big brother.
Oh, for sure, for sure. He's like going, damn, little bro's about to get paid.
Yeah.
So I think he is. I think
No,
there's a place for him out there.
the reason why, so I'll just start with LaShawn Williams. I know Iowa's rushing offense hasn't been much of anything this year. And I mean, they just haven't been anything on offense hardly at all. And yeah, you can look at our defense, and what I'd say our biggest weakness is our dink and dunk. So it's like, well, why would you be looking at their running backs? Like, that doesn't seem all that logical, but this is Iowa we're talking about here. Iowa is king of finding the one thing that we're good at on offense or on defense, and the one thing they're bad at on offense, and being proficient in it. That's just what they do. And so that's what I'm expecting this game. I'm expecting LaShawn to probably break 100 yards of rushing, and he's going to be their bell cow. They're going to rely on him to get those necessary moments where they just need to keep a drive alive. And what do we expect? Oh, it's 3rd and 8, and they're going to pass the ball. No. They're going to run it up the gut with LaShawn. He's going to pick up 11 yards, and boom, first down, sucks the air out of the crowd. So I'm looking at their running game. I think they can identify that our defense could potentially have a weakness on that
middle.
line.
Yep.
And I expect it. I expect their rushing game to be a stout game. I would not be surprised if they end up with 300 total yards of offense at the end of the game, 190 of those being in the run game, between LaShawn and their second string and third string.
Caleb
So
Johnson. Yep.
yeah, Caleb
Or
Johnson.
Caden Johnson. Excuse me.
Yes. So I've got that as their offensive player to watch. And then from ours, of course, we got Chubba Purdy. Dude looks pretty good.
Yep.
Definitely a huge step up. The eye test does not lie. In the past 2 games, we have made a slight step forward in our offensive proficiency, because we have a guy who's not turning over the ball and is able to read plays. That was something else that I noticed. Maybe it was just because it was the scripted drive. I don't know. I might be talking out of both sides of my ass here, but it looked like he was able to read some plays. And then, well, we got to go back to that slide. There we go. So linebacker, Jay Higgins, look at that dude. Look at his stat line.
Yep.
That is ridiculous. That is so, he is all
He's
over
everywhere.
the place.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, that's it. There we go. Jay Higgins, look out for that dude, because he's going to be everywhere.
133 total tackles, 57 on his own, a sack, 3 passes defended, 1 interception, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovered. Holy crap. Don't run toward him, Anthony Grant, if you're healthy. He's going to take the ball from you.
Yeah. Or
and
at
then,
least
of course,
tackle you. He's going to tackle you.
Yeah, Isaac Gifford is the which you talked about already. So,
yep,
those are the guys to watch out for sure. God Almighty, this is going to be an ugly game. Anyway, I think this next slide is the first slide that would have included our guest. His name is Brandon, and we asked for each of us to provide a key to victory. His was play mistake-free football, along with 2 other things he wrote down, and I asked him to pick the one he liked best. That's the one he picked, was play mistake-free football, which I think is absolutely vital. They did pretty well of that last night, except for that 4th and 16 INT right at the end of overtime. Otherwise, Nebraska was pretty clean. Couple of penalties that were not cool, like the one on Hartzog, but seemed a little ticky-tack to me. But anyway. And then I said, this is my key to victory. At NU, we average 4.7 yards per carry, and Iowa gives up on average 3.7 yards per carry all year long in the running game. My opinion, we need to call this thing 75-25, 75% run to pass ratio, so that Nebraska can sustain some drives, wear that defense down, make that son of a gun at linebacker make a lot of damn tackles, so that he's a little beat up by the end of this thing, if he can possibly be beaten. It looks like he's kind of Superman. So that's mine. And There you
Yes,
go.
we've got to make Iowa make mistakes. I know we didn't do that with Wisconsin, but this defense needs to dig in deep. They need to figure out, they need to play the game of their life, and they just need to play with just an absolute tenacity, and they need to force some fumbles. They need to make interceptions happen. I don't know what they need to do, but I mean, literally the difference between the Nebraska and Wisconsin game is we only made one mistake in overtime. But imagine if we would have forced Wisconsin to make one crucial mistake that put our offense in an advantageous position. I think if we scored one more time in the second quarter because of a mistake that we forced Wisconsin to make, I mean, yes, this is obviously reaching for straws here. Just whatever, but you kind of just really suck the life out of the stadium at that point if you get 3 back-to-back scores.
Yep.
I mean, think about it. Last year, the way that we were able to beat Iowa is by forcing them to make mistakes early on in the game, capitalize off of them, and have a comfortable lead, which Iowa was able to close the gap there at the end. But we gave ourselves a comfortable game to win at that point. We are capable of doing it. We're capable of making Iowa make mistakes. We were able to make them do it in their home. We should be able to do that in Memorial Stadium. So that's what I think we need to. I think that's the thing. We need to not make mistakes, like Brandon said, and then complement that by making Iowa make some very crucial mistakes. Because they're going into this game without any motivation. It's Nebraska. Yeah, they have the trophy, but that was with a different coach. An interim coach, that was kind of a gimme, whatever, that didn't matter. They're going to come into this game with just it's Nebraska. They're
got a chip on their shoulder, I think.
Who cares if they're playing for a bowl game? They don't care. I mean, it's like the odds are in Nebraska's favor here for making Iowa make mistakes. It's a kind of Iowa has played very mistake-free football all year round. So it's that's the only reason why they're 9-2 right now. They just haven't made mistakes.
They've taken advantage of other people's mistakes when they make them.
We've got to figure out a way. Tony White has got to just dial his guys in. Yeah, scheme doesn't really matter. Just dial his guys into just play with a level of aggression that you want to murder these guys. Make them hurt. Make them feel pain. Get some flags. Who cares? Who cares? Just get in their head. Whatever you got to do. If we've got to take some penalties to make it happen, go for it. Just it's the last game. You're playing for bowl eligibility right now. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose from this game. So just play lights out. Make mistakes.
It would be nice. It would be nice too, because last time Nebraska went into Black Friday with bowl eligibility on the line, it was 2019. It was Scott Frost's best record as a head coach at Nebraska when they went 5-7 and lost with that kick, that field goal, whatever it was, 47 yards or something that their kicker made, and then blew kisses at our sideline and all that fun stuff. Wouldn't it be nice to turn those tables? That would be kind of cool. Give Alvano that 47-yard shot that wins it, but I digress. Let's move on to the next slide. Bold predictions. Brandon, this wasn't exactly bold in my mind, but it was what he wrote down. First team to 10 points wins. And I'm kind of like, yeah, no crap, Sherlock. Because I think that's kind of where this is going. I don't see a lot of scoring in this thing, but you never know. Then again, we have yet to give our score predictions, and I think both teams score a little over 10, but and that's yours.
My bold prediction is Coleman makes an insane one-handed catch in the corner of the end zone for a touchdown. I don't know when that happens or why it happens, or if it's in the beginning or near the end, whatever. I think Coleman is due for an acrobatic play because he has had. I mean, was it him that made that? I like I said, I was only watching the game passively, but there was a catch in the middle of the field during the Wisconsin game that I believe was him, and he just jumped out, grabbed it, took a hit in the middle of it, and still came down with the ball. Coleman is an athlete. So make him make athletic plays. Of course,
seeing him develop for sure.
Chubb has got to obviously I think 3 pass plays, or maybe it was just 2 that were out of the back of the end zone. Now, granted, there were 2 defenders there each time in the Wisconsin game, so I don't think if he would have put it in the end zone, I don't know if our guy would jump up and get it over those 2 defenders, but I digress. I think you can find Coleman in the corner of an end zone, and if you dot it, like I think Jubba Purdy can potentially do. I think he's got a better arm than the 2 guys before him. Coleman can make that catch, so just give it to him. I think Coleman low key has been the F it. Trey Palmer's down there somewhere.
Yeah.
He's been that guy all year. We just haven't had a guy that can F it, throw it to him.
That can, he can scramble around if he needs to and let the ball go. I mean, I thought Chuba made some great decisions all night last night, throwing the ball away when he needed to, getting out of harm's way. A couple times he got hit, but he doesn't take hits square on. I mean, he's a smart football player, much better than he was last year. Yep. I mean, you got to give Satterfield that kind of credit, that he's developed a quarterback in Chuba that Whipple didn't, who Whipple was supposedly the QB guru. So that's pretty impressive. My bold prediction, if I could get the slide to work. There we go. It's being that way tonight. There we go.
There we go.
Nebraska has a 1-score lead going into the fourth quarter. Might be 7-0, might be 6-0, but Nebraska has a 1-score lead going into the fourth quarter. And there's Brandon's prediction, 10-9 Iowa. Hence his first to 10 wins, I suppose.
That is honestly a pretty decent prediction.
I was like, damn it, that's what I was going to pick. But I didn't. You picked this. I'm curious to see. You think that 100, you're thinking they're going to run the ball well enough to get up to 20 points based on your prediction that you thought that 190 yards is possible against our defense tomorrow, Friday.
Yep. I think that Iowa always does this. It doesn't matter how bad their offense is. They're always going to score points on us. Yeah. And it doesn't matter that we have a better defense this year. Clearly we have weaknesses in our defense, and teams have been able to exploit them as needed. And so I think Iowa figures out a way to put up 20 points. And it's one of those things that I think Nebraska actually has a 13-7 lead or a 10-7 lead, and then Iowa just kind of pulls away and we aren't able to do anything in the second half or anything like that. I just see it being a higher scoring game because it's, once again, whatever the metric is going into the Nebraska-Iowa game, whatever the standard is about Nebraska and whatever the standard is about Iowa, just flip those things, flip them on their head. Granted, it's a new coaching staff. Iowa's got an offensive coordinator going out the door after this year. And there's just a lot of dynamics to consider, but I'm superstitious. So it's like, well, this is what I expect with an Iowa-Nebraska game. So
Once again, you're going back on your promise to never pick Iowa against us.
Yeah, well, we won last time, so I'm gonna roll with that.
You're gonna roll the dice that maybe we go 20-13 against them this time.
I wasn't gonna say it, but I'll say it now. I honestly think the reason why we lost against Wisconsin was because I started watching the game.
Yeah,
I started watching it in the second quarter because first quarter I pulled it up, watched the touchdown was like 14-0. I'm like, whoa, that's crazy. I was right. Well, let me just put the phone away for a little bit, and then I started dialing in about 3 minutes into the second quarter, and so superstition, baby. I just got to stop watching football games and stop predicting us to win.
Yeah, I gotcha. My prediction is 13-7 Iowa. I think Nebraska goes into, based on my bold prediction, goes into the fourth quarter leading 7-0. I think a turnover happens at a critical moment in our end of the field. They capitalize on it and tie the game up. And then, they just, at that point, our defense is tired. They run the ball probably for over 100 yards, and a lot of that comes in that fourth quarter against the tired defense. They kick a couple of field goals, and that's that. So 13-7 is how I see Iowa coming in and getting the Heroes Trophy back. Breaks my heart to say it that Nebraska will not be going bowling again, but hey, I was wrong last year. I thought we'd lose to Iowa badly then too, and we didn't. So There we go. I
There
just
it is.
activated something on my phone. There we go. Whoops. There we go. I just sent a voice text that I didn't mean to send to the group text for Thanksgiving with all the family.
Oh, wonderful.
Right in the middle of my last few comments. Luckily, I didn't curse. So, um,
This is funny. 2 and we did, so there we go. I
and then I deactivated the mic. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Gotta
incredible.
love. Voice texting and podcasting do not mix. Yes. Anyway, next slide is our viewer poll. I put this out late last night. It was probably like 12:30 this morning, actually. And it was before I kind of looked up the stat that's up underneath the heading there, which is that Iowa's defense allows 173 passing yards per game, and Nebraska's offense averages 131. So I just asked, does Chuba get over 150 yards passing versus Iowa? And it was an overwhelming over out of 50 votes. And I made it a push. It gets exactly 150, or the F are you smoking way under, or undy. I forgot to add the R. So I voted the under. I don't think it gets 150.
I don't want him to get 150. I mean, would I? Okay, never mind. I'll reiterate that. If he gets 150, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But that means that we're not relying as much on a running game as I want us to do. So I would hope that we have like 200 yards of rushing and like 115 yards passing. That would be an ideal situation in my book. But if we get, 200 yards of rushing and 150 yards of passing, like, let's go.
Yeah, no
I'll
kidding.
take it. As long as there aren't like turnovers sprinkled in there, one out of every 10 plays, like we've been averaging this year.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be great. But we'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. We will see for sure. Let's see here. I think that wraps up the Iowa preview. Let's talk about some tweets that we saw out there, or I saw anyway, that kind of caught my eye, made me smile, made me think, all that good stuff. This first one really made me smile. In fact, I laughed out loud because it absolutely encapsulated exactly how I was feeling when I woke up this morning. Dr. Rob someone asked, Doc, what are your thoughts on the Wisconsin game? And he responds, let me ask my guy, Redcast Rob. Dude is a GD wordsmith. He'll absolutely nail the sentiment. And Rob said, oops, and then I did that. Look at that. Rob said, fuh. Just imagine an F with about 85,000 U's behind it. And then, of course, the last two letters in the word truck on the end. So, yeah, that definitely encapsulates how I felt after the game last night.
That was actually the first tweet I saw so like you texted me. I'd gotten out of the campsite at about 12:30. So you texted me like right as we were getting into the car, and I was like, oh yeah, I gotta like responsibilities, have to fulfill them. And then I was like I was trying to go to ESPN app, but like my brain just went to Twitter first. So I went to Twitter, and it was the first tweet that I saw, and I was just like, yep. Like, all right, back to ESPN. I got to go check stats.
I'm all good. Yeah, exactly.
I love you, Rob.
Yep. And then, of course, Dr. Rob pops up and said, Craig is now my spirit animal, as a response to a Craig Barnby on Twitter who wrote, I hope they look into some under-recruited kids from non-Power 5 or FCS schools that have developed, excelled, and want to level up. Former highly recruited players that wash out from top-tier schools are not the secret in most cases. I'm not sure what he means by secret other than secret answer or secret sauce or whatever. We need players, not recruits. I tend to agree with that sentiment. But at the same time, Dylan Raiola says, Georgia's not for me. We'll take you, Dylan. Honest, we'll forgive you for not coming here in the first place. Or Zane Flores down in Oklahoma State wouldn't be so bad either. But
or if Ernest Hausman wants to come
Ernest
back,
Hausman wants to come home. That's right. Yeah, your dirty, no good, cheating coach doesn't really want you there anyway, and not any good when they're not stealing signals. So, I still think it's funny. Did you see that story or whatever that was on Twitter that People knew they were stealing signals and scouting teams before the playoff last year, and TCU found out. So they used the same signals anyway, but they were dummy signals, and the actual ones were ones that Michigan didn't know about.
Oh,
So
well,
they
that explains why they were running around with their heads cut off.
yeah, it was
And
like, wait a
TCU is
minute,
just slicing them up.
this was not the play it was supposed to be run. What's going on? Yeah, it
They're
was
looking
pretty
at their
funny.
buddy Stallions like, "Hey, bud, what did you fuck up?"
Yeah, it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny. So this next one kind of caught my attention too. And I remember that narrative out there on Twitter was, oh my gosh, it's Rule. He only gets 1 or 2 wins a year in his first season. He sucked at Carolina, so 4 wins would be pretty cool. But Husker Faithful says, how has the narrative changed from 4 wins would be a successful season to fire everybody? I can't believe we can't beat everybody we play. I think that's a little bit of an over-exaggeration, overly generalized, but I understand the sentiment in the fact that he says, I don't disagree. There's flaws and it's frustrating to watch, but there's a reason no one wants to come play here. We're insufferable. And we can be. As a fan base, we can certainly be insufferable. Nobody's more active on Twitter after a win or a loss than fans, and no one's more critical after either a win or a loss either than Husker fans. So I kind of get his point.
So remember when we were doing our thought exercise with the Cuzcast going into this season? It was like, I remember saying, like, as long as we see tangible growth, I don't care if we get to 6 wins. And their response, rightfully so, was if we see tangible improvements, then we should get to 6 wins.
We should get 6 wins, yes.
And I was trying to identify, because I felt like there's a tangible difference in this team versus teams in the past. And all it is just our defense. Like, that's the tangible difference, is that our defense is playing better games than we had seen under Shenander. And I'm looking at it like, okay, that's growth. We have made growth. There is that, like, if we didn't have the jump in our defense and Tony White was experiencing the same kind of statistical results as we'd seen with Shenander in years past, we would not have 5 wins right now.
Right.
We would be a 4-win team. I think it would be 3-9, 4-8. And so, it's like, what was I expecting this year? It's kind of this. I was expecting one phase of our team to take a noticeable jump, and the others were going to be lagging behind, which I think we were all correct. I mean,
defense,
the skepticism with the offense turned out to be true. We did have skepticism with the defense, though, as well. I remember thinking myself, like, is a 3-5 gonna work?
Yeah.
Is it like, I know it's worked well with TCU, but that's a different conference. Like, is it just in the Syracuse? Like, it just, there were so many questions, but clearly this defense is serviceable in the Big Ten, more than serviceable. I'll take this defense for the next 10 years, every single year. We just got to make changes on the offense. I think it means that Satterfield gets fired. But if things are correct, if things are true, like if he does get the right guys and he does get the right development, and he doesn't have 8 of his starters injured, and things just go great next year, like, all right, I'll gladly admit I'm wrong. Like, that's fine.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Final tweet. Of course, it still doesn't want to pull back up again. Sometimes my Stream Deck likes to work. Sometimes it doesn't. There we go. This is the one that grabbed me. Pete Thamel. I can't remember where I know he's part of some big recruiting service, I believe, or AP or something. Early names, because Syracuse has fired the head coach. And no particular order for the Syracuse job: Jason Candle, Bronco Mendenhall, Doug Marone, Tony White, Al Golden, Kurt Signetti, Tim Knowles, Sean Lewis, bunch of others. But of course, I circled Tony White, and I was like, oh, goody. Let the coaching carousel begin. I know he liked it up there, and he had pretty good defenses up there, but I can't see him leaving here to go coach at Syracuse. And Dr. Abby said, keep my DC's name out of your effing tweet. I thought that was a well used Will Smith meme right there. So yes, keep your DC's name out of that tweet, please. We want to
Abby
keep
is so
Tony
weird.
White around here. See what he does with this young defense that he's going to have here in a year or two, loaded with athletes that are playing a lot of snaps this year. That ought to be fun to see how that looks.
Yes, sir.
So that pretty much ends it. That's it for the show. I believe we are done. And all we have left now is the follow info. Anything else you want to say? Anything burning up that you want to drop? Any final thoughts on the Wisconsin game or hopes for the Iowa game that we haven't completely dashed yet? Nope. Well, I'll say this. While I don't predict us to win, I don't expect this team to lay down either. If we've seen anything from this team this season, it's every challenge, every game. The defense really hasn't played 100% of a game flat. They looked completely overmatched against Michigan. Turns out they were by athletes and by competitive advantage that Michigan had that they shouldn't have had. Maybe Nebraska plays a little better without that. I don't know. I'm not making excuses. They definitely have the better athletes. Michigan is where Nebraska wants to be. Is Rule the one to get us there? Well, by all evidence from this year, we don't know. The jury is still out. I do believe a different offensive system than what Satterfield is interested in running is necessary, because I don't think you can throw it 30, 40% of the time and be successful in the Big Ten, especially late in the year. So we'll see. Is Rule the right guy? Well, Trev paid him like he is. And I think if there's anything we've seen from him that's different from the previous regime is Rule doesn't play golf, and he doesn't drink a crap ton of margaritas when he does play golf. He is absolutely a football coach and a grinder. I think this is the place that needs a grinder if anybody does. So here's hoping his coaches grind as hard as he does, especially Satterfield. But anyway, that's all I've got. Where can folks find you out there on the socials?
Yes, you can follow me at Scott Gen Red Pod. That is Scott with 2 T's. Second T is silent. Give me a follow.
Absolutely. And you can follow the show at Gen Red Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can also listen to the audio podcast from this live stream. Every Monday at 8 a.m. It drops on demand on your favorite podcast app. Just do a search for Generation Red. You will find our show. If you haven't been getting our content and you listen on Apple Podcasts, chances are you're still hooked up to the old feed. Just unsubscribe, do another search for Generation Red, and resubscribe, and you will find the new feed as well as all of our old shows. So if you like going back and listen to what we sounded like back when we were crazy and thought that 2021 was going to be the 9-3 season we all had dreamed of when Scott Frost got here, you can subscribe and go back and listen to all that crazy stuff. And anyway, genredpod.com is our website where you can find all our links to socials as well as listen to all our past shows, watch our past live streams. genredpod@gmail.com to send us an email. And until next time, he's Scott, I'm Ken. Together we're Generation Red, and we are chronicling the Huskers' hopefully return to greatness, one podcast at a time, because there's no place like Nebraska.
And Iowa's corn just sucks.
Pretty much. We'll see you next week. Go Big Red.